Well, first of all, good afternoon, everybody. I just got done from a tour across the street at the Downtown Skyline's newest project, and it was it's going to be great. It was absolutely eye-opening, and it was wonderful. Not just the structure that we saw. In fact, I didn't think I saw one right angle in the entire place. Not because it was bad workmanship, but it was because it was very exquisite workmanship. There's so many curves and rounds in this structure. You're going to be amazed when you finally see the finished product. It was definitely the product of skilled workmanship. And I'm pleased to be joined not only by my senior staff member, but by a member of the Carpenters Union whose team is responsible for the work behind us. But more important than the structure and the magnificence of the building going up behind us were some of the people that I met, whether it was Jacob or Matt or several others. Jacob was 22 years old. He's from Greenwood. This was an alternative plan for him instead of college, and he's very happy. I attribute, and after talking to him, I can say that I believe a lot of that happiness was due to the dignity of work that he has in a place like this with people like this. So all that was very positive. And then I think it was Matt, who I just met. I missed him on the actual tour, but I got to speak with him just now before we came to the microphone. He is a product of the helmet to hard hat operation. So it's personnel from the military who are transitioning to civilian life. And sometimes, as he said, and having experienced this in other parts of the state when talking with other Hoosiers, it's a very difficult transition. But he's happy as well, because he's with, as he told me, as he described for me, he's with another brotherhood now. So I think that's important. This press conference isn't about cheerleading for a particular union or for our particular project. But I wanted you to understand where I just came from and how impressive it was, factually. This is about fairness, and particularly this is about the Fairness Act, which was just passed. Certain sections of it are going to take effect July 1st. It's going to give my office and me particular authority to enforce provisions to make sure that employers are not hiring illegal aliens over our citizens. And in that respect, the law, and certainly I don't care if you're union or non-union, but we do expect whatever kind of operation you run to have it be run fairly. And that means that you hire Hoosiers. You at least hire U.S. citizens. And you do not try to exploit cheap labor from people who shouldn't be here in the first place. It's not fair to the workers that are here, who are here legally, but it's also not fair to even to the ones who are here illegally. It's unsafe for them. So starting July 1st, you're going to see our office more and more at job sites like this to see exactly what's going on and who's being hired and how many. The fines, and I'll let Blake Lanning, my assistant chief deputy, go into some of the details and talk about the penalties if you have interest in that. And then, of course, I want Kyle from the union to speak about some of these aspects as well. Another thing I saw at this job site, and I wonder, it's an open question, I wonder if I'm going to see it at other job sites, is how clean it was. And as a leader of a team of people at the Attorney General's office, I can tell you how important culture is to work ethic, how important culture is to safety. And I could tell that when you keep a job site clean, something that sounds pretty simple, that bleeds off into other areas of the culture such that you actually have a better and safer workplace. But, as I observed, keeping things clean costs money. And if you're cutting those kind of corners, you might be cutting corners in who you employ yourself. And so we're going to be, we're not the clean police, but we're going to be looking at the culture too that these employers have, and as we go on these different job sites and as we receive tips whether they're from workers, other employers, or however we get them. Not that we're going to believe a tip, but we're certainly going to follow up on what we perceive to be credible ones. So with that first, Blake Lanning, my Assistant Chief Deputy, to go into some of the more details of the Fairness Act.
Hello, everyone. Blake Lanning, Assistant Chief Deputy with the Attorney General's Office. I'll be very short. I'll just note or highlight a couple things that the Attorney General just said, which is that at the Attorney General's direction, throughout his time as Attorney General, our office has been very active trying to crack down on illegal employment issues, abuses at the work site across the state, including looking at labor trafficking and other issues that might come up, particularly when they're connected with the illegal immigration problem. And because of our office's work and the Attorney General's work with the General Assembly this past session, we now have a very, very important significant new tool in our toolkit to address these problems, and that's the Fairness Act. And in particular, the provision that we're talking about today of the Fairness Act is the provision that provides, for the first time ever under state law, Indiana has never had a law like this, the first time ever, state-level penalties for employers that knowingly hire, recruit, or employ illegal aliens. It's been illegal at the federal level for a very long time. But the state of Indiana has never gotten into the business of policing illegal employment in this way, and it's tremendously important that we finally are doing that. And so a big part of the reason why we're here today and other things we'll be doing over the next couple months is to make sure that when that new law takes effect on July 1, we're ready to hit the ground running to enforce it. Thanks.
Thank you, Blake. And now Kyle Gresham, looking at his title, he calls himself a representative of the union and the political lead.
Good afternoon, everyone. One of the things that many people don't know about is the underground economy that exists in construction. Cash under the table, folks working without proper insurances, and just exploited workers in general. And this is happening in the day-to-day all around us. And legitimate business can be hard to do, it can be expensive, but it's certainly worth it. Every worker out there deserves the opportunity to go home safe to their families. They deserve the opportunity for upward mobility and the opportunity to give back to their community. And when we look at job sites like this, you can see it. You can see it around every corner, and you can see it with every worker that's on site. But that's not the case in every scenario. So to all of the folks out there that are making more than their fair share by cutting corners, by going after and exploiting workers, not paying federal overtime, I would just say this to you. It's wrong, and it's going to be noticed. Every worker out there deserves to have a fair shake. Most of these contractors have a 30% delta against legitimate businesses, and that penalizes good Hoosier companies for doing things the right way. So I think in the time to come, as we look at this, hopefully we can provide a safer and more equitable place for Hoosiers to work in.
Thank you, Kyle, and the three of us are happy to take questions.
Attorney General, how would you determine if an employer knowingly hires someone who's not here?
Yeah, thank you, because that is the requirement. You know, can't be by accident. Yeah, they have to knowingly do that, and you know, that term is there's a ton of jurisprudence on what meets a knowingly criteria. You know, they have to have intent behind it, and you know, it's pretty easy to do an e-verify these days. It's pretty easy to keep accurate records, withhold taxes, do those things that any other business has to do. So the absence of those factors would be an indicator of their intent in that kind of situation. I mentioned complaints. We're going to investigate public news reports. You guys are going to be a part of this. And don't forget collaboration with other law enforcement officials, because there's an intersection here. I'm not just here to enforce employment law. I'm here to stop labor trafficking. I'm here to stop the exploitation of other human beings. And so I'm going to get tips from my other law enforcement partners. Now, to be clear, The General Assembly did not give my office criminal authority. I cannot put people behind bars. I can make referrals to those that can. But they've given me significant fining authority. So we're going to be able to hurt people, or the employers, where it hurts most, and that's in their pocketbooks.
Will your office prioritize certain industries?
That's another fair question. We're gonna go where the complaints lead us. This is, yeah, I think I can tell already, to answer your question, be completely honest, it's going to be in the construction industry. But you know, starting July 1st, it's going to depend what comes in our door, what kind of tips we get, and what kind of collaboration we have, either from different industries or law enforcement itself.
Can you say whether you have heard any sort of reports? I know most of it goes into effect this summer, but has your office gotten any tips already about employers going to be violating this?
Yes.
So, let me just see if I can get this right. In order to hold companies accountable, you're working up actual reports or tips, or is there another structure in terms of holding businesses accountable? Is there, let's say, you check into a handful of businesses, how are you enforcing it?
We're not going to start, we don't have, frankly, to be honest, we don't have the capacity to roam the streets and just walk in. So we're going to rely on leads. We're going to rely on leads that give us a reasonable basis to start filing with these employers what we call basically subpoenas or questions, civil investigative demands, that they answer our questions. And from there, we're going to go where those answers take us. And if they don't answer, then we'll be in court with them. And that's not different than we would do other labor trafficking kind of investigations. And then, except that in labor trafficking, if someone's in immediate danger, we will obviously call local law enforcement in right away. We don't expect that kind of scenario necessarily unless we see some real dangerous things going on, some real bad labor trafficking that has to be stopped right on site. And Blake, I don't know if you want to chime in on that, or if
I
you
don't
have-
think I have any
Okay.
idea.
Another question I've got is, how do you respond to critics who say,
Critics,
critics? who
what's not to
say-
love? What are you talking about?
Well, I'm just curious. How do you respond to people who say that Fairness Act will encourage possible racial profiling?
Racial profiling? Well, I'm not going to worry a thing about that. We're going to go where the facts lead. If there's a certain demographic that's being labor trafficked more than others, do you think they care that we're profiling them because they're a certain color? We wouldn't be doing that. We're profiling anything or any job site because it's labor trafficking. Now, if that happens, the point is, if that happens among a certain demographic more than other demographics, then so be it. That's not going to stop me from stopping labor trafficking. The critics can criticize.
Given that lawsuit from the Monroe County Sheriff's Department, I mean, depending on what a court decides, if the court should decide to give sheriff temporarily or an injunction or anything like that, does that undermine enforcement before you even get started?
I appreciate that question because that gives me a chance to clarify some important parts of the Fairness Act. The sheriff who wrongly filed a lawsuit in Monroe County against the Fairness Act filed it on a certain part of the Fairness Act. This is a different part of the Fairness Act. So no, that lawsuit has no effect. We're going to win that lawsuit. I hope we can get it dismissed outright, but either way, we're going to get it dismissed. He's grasping for straws. This law is completely constitutional. We do the constitutional law for the state of Indiana. We defend the constitutionality of all Indiana statutes. We advised on the Fairness Act. We wouldn't give advice that was unconstitutional. So the sheriff is grasping at straws because he's putting his ideology above the safety of his citizens. He's putting illegal aliens above his citizens. And this is a tactic to delay enforcement that most other sheriffs in this state, most other sheriffs across the United States have no problem with. And that is cooperation with their federal partners.
Update on how your office is working with the Department of Corrections and Jails to work on training policies?
not the subject of this press conference, but they have their own training, and we're not the training police for the Department of Corrections. I know that they're one of our highest flying clients, their biggest clients, so we have a lot of cases with them, so we advise them on a case-by-case basis. And sure, we're always a phone call away for them if they want that advice. A formal training program with the Department of Corrections, not being my agency, always happy to help. I think it'd be a call of the governor.
Attorney General, there's been some suggestion that stricter enforcement could lead to labor shortages, thus making projects longer, drive up costs. Maybe that's a question for you or perhaps the union as well. Just wondered if you wanted to
Hey, I'm all for economic development, and just because I wear this Attorney General hat doesn't mean that I don't care about that this state grow immensely economically. In the long run, we cannot grow this state foundationally, permanently, if we're going to be unsafe, if we're going to put human trafficking, and that includes labor trafficking. It's not just sex trafficking. Human trafficking is labor trafficking as well. If we're going to put those economic development interests above the safety of people like that, I just won't do it. And no solid economic development plan or no other position that either I or anyone else is in who says that we could subject humans for the almighty dollar is going to really win long term. I think it's a bad strategy. I think we have to be smart. We have to understand that we have competitors in terms of other states, even in terms of other nations when it comes to economic development. But in the long run, protecting our citizens, especially the ones that are here legally, are here properly, should be the priority, and I think in the end we'll win.
So within the construction industry, there's the practice of tax fraud, and that's contractors that are avoiding their fiscal responsibility to pay their fair share. And in that does not constitute labor trafficking, but it is an illegal business model that happens, quite honestly, all over the place. And what I want to say is that not all tax fraud involves labor trafficking, but all labor trafficking involves tax fraud. And in the time that I've been a representative, I've been fortunate enough to work some cases to help build investigations against labor traffickers and people who exploit workers. So to what you ask, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. This is not a union or a non-union issue. This is about workers. This is about doing what's right. This is about paying their fair share. So looking at this, I think that there's maybe this means that some of the companies that are suffering because of the companies that are using this illegal business model and they aren't getting their shot, maybe they're going to get their chance to shine. Because 30% reduced rate is a lot for someone to contend with, especially small businesses throughout our state.
So have there been union contracts, union companies that have been undercut by other companies hiring folks who are not here?
I'll actually speak more to that, not so much the union, but there's been contractors all over the state. Union and non-union. It's about legitimate contractors. People who follow the rules are suffering because of the people who do not. So yes, yeah, absolutely they have. I've seen drywall, I've seen workers hanging drywall for as little as 15 cents a square foot. And if you do the math, that's not a lot. And there's no overtime, there's no insurances, there's no workers' compensation insurance. These workers are in a completely exploitive business model. If they are to get hurt on the job site, or fall off a ladder or something, they're fired before they hit the ground. There's no medical attention for them. It's, quite honestly, it's modern day slavery.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate your attention to this.